Hello. Today we are painting a field of lavender and we need to start with our supplies. So I have a mechanical pencil, do a little bit of a sketch here, my sticky tack eraser, which I like because it's moldable and it's gentle on the watercolor paper. For the paper I have a 140-pound cold press. That means it's got that medium tooth, that little bit of texture that's just right for the amount of water that we need. Also, my paper is 5x7, and we should be okay because we're not going to use too much water. That'll help with not having bending or warping. I have my brushes for today. You need to have 3 sizes. So small, medium, and large. Keep in mind this is going to work for the size of paper that I have. If you wanted to do your painting larger, then you might need a larger brush or something. Okay, and remember, if you don't have, say, a super small one, you can get detail with this one. It just takes a little more control. I have the one I typically use for our projects is the Classics. It's from Prima Marketing. And then I have a little extra thing of palette paper because, as you can see, my palette is a mess and I don't want to get rid of those colors yet, clean it up. So I'm just going to mix on this side here. I have 2 containers of water. One is for cleaning the dirty brush, and then one you do a second rinse, and that's good because that second one stays cleaner. So when we're doing wet on wet, which we're doing quite a bit on this project, that way we can have clean water. Okay, so the project. Here are a couple of demos that I kind of did to get an idea of what I wanted. This one, I'm liking the way it's going. So I'm just going to jump right in. I may edit it a little bit. I want to use a different pinkish color up here. But we've got this tree. What we're learning today is really cool. It's about perspective. And if you see here, these are rows of lavender, and all of the rows of lavender at a farm are all going to be obviously parallel. But the perspective that we're looking at is like everything is going to this one point right under the tree. That's called a vanishing point. And if you think about the concept, if you're looking down a street, maybe your neighborhood street, and you can see that the power lines or the tree lines seem to all be converging at one spot, like they're going to suddenly run into each other, that's not really the case. The street's going to stay parallel. The sidewalks would be parallel on each side. The railroad tracks are, of course, going to be parallel, but the way perspective works, the way we're looking at it, it appears that they're going to crash into each other at some point. It's how we get that nice 3D effect on 2D projects. So let's jump right in with this. We'll start with our drawing. We'll need to start with our horizon line. So horizon line is where sky meets land, and I want to go below the halfway mark. So there's halfway. I'm going to go down low here, maybe right about here. Just a straight line across. And then we'll need to do we're going to have our vanishing point right about there over to the left side of the painting, and then just draw lines that are going to represent our each row of lavender. You can we'll be able to edit it a bit as we're working on our, up and down a little bit. The paint will cover the pencil as always. So then we want to do a cute little tree here. So go with your fluffy, squiggly tree, just do-do-do-do. You could just basically little scribbles, and then a little trunk would be right about there. Let me get a little bit more out here, so a little more even. Okay, then that's all we need, right? Look, you know how to draw. No biggie, right? Okay, then we're going to start with a light coat of purple. I didn't finish this one, and that was partially because I wanted you to see how we're going to be building it up. We'll first paint this light purple over the whole thing, this one. And then we go and add a little bit of dark on the edge of each of these sections, and that represents the shadow that's created by all of the lavender plants. And then after it's dry, we go on top and add some greenery and add little speckles that represent the tops of all the lavender and give us that look. And of course, we're going to have a fun sky. We're yellow because just the sun, but also yellow is a complementary color to purple, so it's very pleasing to the eye. So I'm going to make a little bit of paint here just so I'm ready. I'm going to grab, I don't love this pink. that came with my set. So I'm gonna try to doctor up by taking a dash of red, and I'm just have that ready on the side, grabbing a little purple, just a bit, and we're gonna use also a little extra water. There we go. And I mean, I could add a dash of this pink. That kind of helps a little bit. There we go. So then I have to wash this, remember 2 waters. So once in the dirty, once in the clean, then tap my paper towel. Now I'm grabbing purple. I'm just going straight in for the purple that I have here. And remember, if you have a different paint set, you'll just adjust. You could also make purple, blue and red make purple. So you can go ahead and make your own purple if you don't have it in your paint set. Let's get a little bit ready. This will be our lighter one. Oh, it's not showing up really well on my palette. So we'll get it in there. All right, so then I'm rinsing brush in the dirty, rinsing in the clean, and then we're going wet on wet, and I do have my larger brush. So turn it to the side here, and we're going to add water to the whole bottom part of the painting. You may actually be able to see that because my brush is still a little purple, but it's okay. So we're just adding the water. So we're going wet on wet. I'm adding the water just horizontally across, but when we add the paint, we're going to paint in this toward the vanishing point that way. So we'll go ahead and grab our purple. I'm gonna grab a little bit more. I've got this large brush. It holds a lot of paint, so I like that. And then work toward in these from back to towards the tree. This will help with the eye. If we paint this way for it, it makes it look, it doesn't give us the illusion of everything going towards the tree. We need that for our depth. Oh, look at that. Got a little bit in my sky. It'll be okay since we're doing a mixed sky, but you can go ahead and take a little dabble if you make a mess. Okay, grab a little more. Okay, so then I'm gonna wash my brush again. So I have a super clean brush, dab it with my paper towel, and I'm gonna go along, I'm gonna flip it upside down, but I'm gonna go along here where I got a little bit. And just clean up that edge a little bit. All right, there we go. There's our light purple. That'll need to dry. As we work on the sky, we're working on just a nice yellow, bright yellow, happy center. So I'm cleaning up my brush again. So I have a very clean brush. I just had purple on it, so I really need it to be clean because we'll be using yellow now, and I don't want purple and yellow make a very brown kind of gold color, and if it's great if you needed it for something gold or even like a tree trunk, but not so cute in the sky. So I've got some yellow ready there. Right. So now I need a very clean brush once again, and clean water on your sky. We're not going down here to touch this purple. We're staying roughly above the tree. I know it's hard to see clear water, but do your best. We're not making swimming pools. We're just getting the surface wet. It's not the whole sky either, and you'll see why. I'm gonna grab some of that awesome yellow here, and then start to just add that in. I need a little bit more, whole bunch. There we go. We want this to just like a sunny explosion in the sky. There we go. That's it. Now, wash your brush super clean again. We really want to avoid mixing colors unless we need to do it right now. So I have a clean brush. I've tapped it with my paper towel, and then just, you can go along the edges and maybe soften up, spread your yellow a little bit with the clean water. Keep going back and forth, washing, dabbing, softening, just so that it's not a hard edge on the yellow. It doesn't dry hard, it dries gentle. See how I'm just going along the edge here with a soft brush? It will make it flow a little more, but it will also pick up any extra paint and soften so you don't have something hard. Okay, so there's a nice, gorgeous yellow. I love that. The purple and yellow is just perfect together. I love it. So then I've got this little pink I made. We're gonna see how that goes and add that in to just a little bit here and there. These little blooms. And remember, pink and yellow make orange. So, which orange in your sky isn't a bad thing. It's just, you know, what are you looking for? So then I'm gonna wash my brush. Super clean, please. You have clean water. And then move things around a bit. I'm able to move these things around because my painting is still very wet. If you can't walk away and let this dry and then come back in and move things around. Okay, keep that in mind. Clean brush. Please keep on. There's gonna come a point when I can't do this anymore because once it's started to dry, we end up with a little less freedom in that ability to move things. Okay, so there's that. What a fun sky. Then, super clean brush, and I'm taking a little bit of blue. We're gonna see, pull off a little bit. I want it to, again, be super light, so I'm adding more water, makes a lighter color. You have to be careful here because I don't want yellow and blue make green. I absolutely don't want blue and green in the sky. So if you're gonna do this, it's gonna be only touching where there was pink. Even if it got on the purple down below, that's totally fine, but let's try not to do the blue around the yellow. Let me grab it a little extra. And you can leave some white too. Remember, we don't have to paint every inch. It'll just look like a cloud, right? All right, so that's where we're at. I'm gonna wash my brush super good. And then pick it up and maybe even move it around a little bit, because then gravity will let things move. Looks like a crazy sky, right? Okay, so I'm washing. I'm gonna switch to no, I'm still gonna use this brush. Let's use this one still. Super clean brush. Just gonna run it along the blue and the purple, soften that whole bit so that my horizon line, just purple going into blue, looks so pretty. Okay. All right, now here we go. Let's see, how are we doing on this purple? It is cold. So cold watercolor paint, I just took the back of my hand rather than the front because your palm has oils on it. So if you take the back, usually you're better. Cold means it is a tad wet, and that is okay right now. We're happy with that. We're taking our purple just straight out and going over all of the lines that we drew. And of course, we're doing it from the end of the painting up into that tree. And we don't need to, that brush is too big, so I'm gonna go ahead and switch. We don't need it to be all the way up. In fact, I'm going to do what I can to fade it out as I get closer to the tree, okay? And that's because these represent the shadows under the plants. And we technically would see, if you're standing right about here, you're a person right here, you would see all of the statues and stuff. I'm gonna put my finger in the tree so there's no paint on it. You would see all the shadows and stuff happening at the front, but you wouldn't necessarily see details of shadows up there because it's too far away. So it just sort of add it and then lift up. Okay, then grab your super clean brush, wash number 1, wash number 2, dab with your paper towel, and then take this brush and then just soften. It's all about softening things today. If you go over what you just painted, it won't be quite so harsh, that line. Soften. And just finish up softening that line. You can pull it down so that you're pulling into the light area too. All right, so that's what we've got going on there. Okay, my sky is cool to the touch, so it's still a little wet. So I don't want to do the tree yet because I don't want green to seep up in there, because avoiding a green sky is really what I want. So how about if we let this dry? Okay, so painting's dry, and I want to take a bit of my purple, just a medium purple here. And I'm going to go over, I just want to darken up a bit. Same thing, where we do a little line. Maybe I'll do 3 on this side. Then go in with a super clean brush. It still has water on it though, and let this bleed. Pull this down and wash it over the whole area. Pull it down. I just want to take, and I may even go in there a little bit and just add a bit more. Just darkening up a tad in the field. But see, I don't want hard lines. See these lines? I don't want these lines to happen. So every time you see like a line that's forming before it's dry, just grab your wet brush and erase that out. Sometimes the hard line has a purpose and it's okay. And sometimes you're like, ooh, I want to avoid that. Let me grab a little water and soften it so that we don't end up with it being like that. A little bit of water can be a nice eraser, but it can also cause you problems if you add a little too much. So the great thing with watercolor is it's a balancing act. It has a mind of its own, but also practice is how we get better at most things. But yeah, watercolor especially. So I'm gonna add the water to these sections, grab a little bit and just these, a little glazing is what this is called. Layering probably is another way to call it, but we call it glazing in watercolor. We call it layers in acrylic. So, all right. Just added a little extra to that. So now we'll let that dry for a bit, and we'll get ready to do, I'm gonna do this tree, which is great to jump right into the green, because we'll get ready for the green in for the stems of the lavenders. So I'm starting with a very clean brush with just water and adding just water to this tree. So wet on wet again. Just put water everywhere. There are areas that you don't have water to, which would be cool when we go in there. So get a whole bunch of green paint on your brush and then tap it in there, and you'll see it start to blossom and bloom, that's called. Just do a couple of taps, watch the paint spread around. You could even add a little bit of yellow if you wanted to, and then let it be. Okay, great. So then, here we go. So the next step is optional. You're gonna want as much of your green paint, make a little pile of green, and then if you have a little white acrylic paint or white watercolor, I have, yes, there is some white on this palette. If you're using this, you could use that. I just prefer, this is bleed proof white. It's Dr. P.H. Martin's. There's a lot of different, you could also use just a dash of acrylic white. I just want a little more opaque on my green for my stems. So I'm grabbing a little bit of that and mixing it in my green paint. So I'll mix a little bit of my white and a little bit of the green. So I've got that down there. I'm grabbing a whole bunch of green and making this light green. The main thing is I just want it to be a little more opaque. Okay, and then we're actually going to use the smallest brush. Your smallest brush, or you'll just have to be a little more steady-handed if you don't have a brush this small. It's totally fine. Also, another tip is if you have a green pen, you could even decide to experiment with a little bit of mixed media and go that route. So, okay, I've got a lot of green paint, a little bit of white, and I've made this opaque watercolor is basically what we've done. And what we're doing here is we're creating this visual of all these stalks. Now we really, if you imagine the field, we don't need the green lines, the stems on the entire section. That would be overkill. If you were standing here, technically all you would see would be the front of these stems, and then it's just going to be a mass of purple heads. So just along all of these rows, we need green stems, and in front as well. Okay, so I'll show that. Got my, just adding, we'll start with this one here. Just some little green vertical lines. They don't have to be perfect because it's just the visual, the eye is going to visualize it to be, everything's just right. It doesn't have to be every single stem that you can identify as a single plant, right? Also, as we get closer to the tree, it needs to be smaller and indistinguishable, even less detailed and perfect, because if it's far away, we wouldn't see details. So it just might be a little dot up there, or you know, a watery blob of green, sort of. Now, so we're just continually doing sort of like a number 7, I guess. So now I'm doing it here, lines running across. Still dipping in that opaque green that I made, or a regular dark green that you might have made. And that's running along here. And then it would turn the paper a little easier, and then go up, and then kind of out of sight green, little just dots instead. I'm going to do this here. This is even farther away, so you really could have tiny, if we're standing right here, this would just be little taps, nothing, you know, here. Just vertical lines that are not at all super perfect. It's just the human eye is going to see a mass of green and go ahead and assume, oh, those are stems, and just fill in the gaps. So going up this, these lines, which remember we painted a darker bit of purple there, and that represented the shadow that these stalks are creating, because the sun is going to be on the top, getting through some of it, but it wouldn't necessarily get all the way to the ground, and that's why our ground is going to be a little darker in that area. Well, purple will cover that up, so I'm not going to worry about that. Okay. We're going to be doing purple all over that little bit of white paint, so we'll be fine. So it's kind of nice when I make a mistake, right? You can see how I would fix it. Okay, a little bit of purple there. Same thing here. Just short horizontal strokes. They don't have to be perfect. They shouldn't be too fat, you know, don't press down too hard. I'm very light touching here. If you hold your brush at 90 degrees, you actually do better. So I should have earlier. Maybe I'm grabbing a little more green, mixing in this green white so I have a more opaque. But if you're using acrylic or gouache, gouache is just acrylic watercolor, you know, or so you don't have white. You have white in your set too, and it will work. I'm just snobby. Okay. And you know, some watercolor artists don't believe in using white at all, and they use they would use like a masking fluid, which would make that part of the paper would be the white. But I'm not that person. So I add a little water to my green mixture, because as we get farther away, I want my things to be a little more indistinguishable. So I'm okay this area, it being very bright or clearly a stem, but as we get to the top here, this needs to be lighter and just not as many visual. Definitely you could even really like see through, I'm not gonna see, just less detail. Imagine if you were standing here, you're not going to be able to see well that far away, so things should not be perfect. Okay, there we go. So that's good. Do any touch-ups, add anything you want to add as far as that goes, and then this needs to dry. I think what we may do is check our tree and see if we can add a little bit to our tree. Okay, I'm washing my brush, and then this tree, it's still a little wet, which is actually cool. I'm gonna take some dark green. So grab a little bit, I'm putting a little bit of blue in this green and some green that I already have. Not green with the white in it, just the plain green and blue. And then I'm gonna tap in the bottom of my tree just a couple of taps at the bottom. It'll bleed up into the top. It's just gonna look like the bottom of the tree is a little darker. That's all, okay? Super cute, woohoo. Wash your brush and then lay it down. We don't leave our brushes in the water, of course. Then we need the green stems to dry, so we'll wait a bit, and then we will be actually on a couple finishing touches here, adding all the purple dots. So I'll show you on the demo piece. So you'll see, I didn't do obviously these ones because I kind of got the concept, but of what I wanted to teach you. But and the difference in the two, what I liked about this, more detailed, more purple dots, darker purple, more of them. And then as we move up, things get kind of blurry. That's because, again, we're farther away. So there's a whole bunch of dots here, but then up here, it's really less defined what's going on. And that's really what we want to do. So make sure that your stems are dry. So if you've got a dry painting, and I have my smallest brush, the smallest brush that you have is good. Just know that if it's not as small as mine, you'll just have to be a little more careful. But I know you're gonna be awesome. We'll grab your purple, just the straight purple out of your container, if that's what you wanna work. It needs to be darker. And remember that the lavender blobs that are in the front would be darker. Then as we move to the back, because the way perspective works, the farther things are, the lighter they are in color and the less defined. That's why we need more watery blobs at the top of this area. And down here, we need more crisp items. So, and darker. So we'll you can start with just a bit and see where it's at. I'll start right up front here and think of the shape of a lavender, and you're kind of dotting in that, but again, we're not doing, this is not like a portrait of a specific lavender plant, so feel free to be a little relaxed. Lavenders have this sort of cone shape. You can just do something similar to that. Not feeling exact, but they do need to be different heights. So down here, I'll have just more defined little dots. Doo-doo-doo. And then as we move up it, we'll get a little more water could be added to lighten it and make it more, you can see there's less detail in this section of watercolor versus down here. So just follow your way up. Go ahead, add a little bit. I'm just gonna go ahead and do all of these fronts really quickly. They'll stay wet enough. And it's okay if you're touching your green. You're not trying to put an exact flower on the top of each of these little stems. Like, I should not seriously be able to see each stem and identify that top. It's just the human eye will make it look like a plant in the brain. So we're okay with that. I'm just doing little tabs. You do want to make sure that you have some of that light coming through, otherwise our eyes can't see the difference, you know. So the contrast of the light purple that we started with, now I'm putting this darker one on top. That's going to help us identify things better. Okay, I really like this one because we are trying to also create this look of these lines, these rows. So I'll move up this row here on the right, like I'm adding, and then you'll see as I get closer in, I've got to dip my brush in some water to lighten and take the detail out. I'm just tapping. Added a little bit of water, just finishing up these lavender dots all the way to the top. And just do that same thing through all the way up. You can see that there's less spaces between the lavender toward the top. See right here, you can see I'm letting a lot of the light color come through on there, but not on the ones that are farther away. And that's how we give the illusion of depth. All right, so we've got this field of lavender here. I just want to add a little bit of dark purple. So take your purple you've been working with and the slightest bit of black and work it into there. So it should still look very purple. It should not look like black. And we can run that just underneath. So at the roots of your, just a little bit of purple dots on the bottom of underneath some of your purple stems. It'll just look like the dirt, which is brown, but we're looking at all this purple, so our eye is going to continue to see a lot of purple, but with it being a purpley black, it'll just continue to look like it's in shadow. That's all. So take it down here, we would take it right around here, just to the bottom. Same thing, little purpley black there, and then even, it's underneath, it's the rose. Remember the original lines that we drew? We're going back over once again. Remember we drew them, then we painted purple, and then we made those lines a little bit darker because that showed our bed, that defined our bed, and we're defining it again through the shadows that the stems are planting. There. And not so much up at the top. It's going to be more toward the front too, so I feel like that's a little bit too much. So I take a brush that's very dry and just bring some of that down. There you go. Okay, all right. So now I need a little bit of shadow under these front ones and then up into some of my stems. Okay, look at that. Up into some of these. I still like seeing some of the white. It's just nice, so I'm gonna leave that there. Okay, so then I've got my tiny brush, and remember I had a little bit of that white paint. So you have two options here. I have a white pen, which is one of my favorite things. It's a white Signo Uniball. And we'll just add a little bit of highlights here and there. My painting's dry. Add a little bit, maybe just some little white dots here and there on some of these front flowers. Just some extra little dots here. Your other option, the pen is just nice and easy to control, so I like this Signo. Add going up the tops, just adding them in here and there. Or you could also take a very fine tipped brush or a very fine tipped stylus. Remember, a stylus is a little pin point of these, and the white acrylic, and just go in with tiny little dots here and there, just to add a little highlight, a little extra. Is that a white? Yeah, right there. A little dot It's not a lot. It's not a full-on circle. It's just a little pop of highlight there, whichever way works best for you. Not too much paint. Just go in and add the lightest bit of brown to show a trunk. Just a suggestion. Just a little, one swoosh of your brush and the human brain fills in the gaps. So you don't have to do too much in there. So that is our field of lavender. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you for joining me. See you in the next class.